Chapter 1. Ashley Scott. Get that ruler away from your rear end. My usually sweetness. Light twin sister Amber grabbed it out of my hand before I could take care of the itch I'd been dealing with all day. Amber, you give me back that ruler or so help me. What? Like you're gonna take me? In your condition? Amber smiled and turned to her partner Elle, who was planted on the plush and comfy Davenport, remote control in hand, trying to catch up on NFL scores. Elle was in her late 30s, which kinda made Amber a trophy chick, I guess. Booby prize, maybe? Honey. My twin flashed Elle that dazzling Scott smile. Oh no, you don't? Elle Riley dribbled from the side of her mouth without taking her eyes from the split-screen ESPN channel. I am not falling for that one again. Amber furrowed her brow, frustrated for the moment. MB, don't frown, I said mock-sweet. You'll need to get Botox before you're 30. My sister turned to me with a flip of the bob she had going this week and sighed. And you need to keep all sharp objects away from your rear. At least until that wound. Bullet wound. I interrupted. Fine. Bullet wound. Only you would manage to get shot in the ass by a hunter's ricochet. Hiking around in God knows where, Idaho. That was my story anyway. My twin tossed her head again and rolled her eyes. Until that heals. She turned to JR, her 5-year-old son, my nephew, and tickled him. Seriously, who names their kid after a nighttime soap opera character from the 80s? Okay, it was short for John Robert, but still. At least it wasn't Junior. We're locking up the cutlery until your Aunt Ashley is all healed up, Amber said. Jar giggled as my sister tickled him. Then Elle decided to join in on the fun and took playful swats at him with the rolled-up sports section while he shrieked in fun. I, on the other hand, seized the moment's distraction to drag myself painfully upstairs to my room while the guest bedroom I occupied while the girls got domestic. Yuck. Sometimes being around the Gordon Scotts was so sugary I thought I'd develop a whole mouthful of cavities. I tried to sit on the bed, but having to favor one cheek didn't make things easy, so I rolled over and lay on my stomach. Besides, it still itched like crazy, and then came a knock at the door. Hey sis. Amber poked her head in. You know, the sooner you heal up, the sooner you can be back doing what you love to do. I cocked my head, threw back my own Jennifer Aniston locks, the ones that somehow managed to put Amber's to shame despite sharing a jean set, and said, "Faux sweetly, don't worry. I'll be out of your hair before you know it." Amber's eyes narrowed. I knew she'd get the dig. She wasn't happy with her latest stylist, and it took time for her hair to grow out. We both used to have the same length tresses, but this year she'd opted for what was supposed to be a hot shoulder-length bob, and it just wasn't quite working the way she wanted. Ew. Trying to recover, she turned and tossed over her shoulder. Yes, well. Remember what I always say. She looked back just as I was pushing the door closed with my foot, which in turn pressed on her retreating BB-branded ass. I know. Guests are like fish and family. I smiled back at her. We finished in unison. They both stink after 3 days. Remember what else they say? I yelled as she retreated down the hall. What's that? My sister yelled back. You can pick your nose, but you can't pick your family. That makes no freaking sense. Kleenex. Sigh. By the time I get out of here, I'll probably be ripe as rotten fruit and smell just as bad. So tell me, God, what the hell did I do to deserve this? No. Chapter 2. There comes a time in every girl's day when she's just gotta sit down and scratch. Make that in every bitch's day when she's just gotta, even if her ass hurts like a son of a bitch. I'll spare you the details. See, I'm a werewolf. Scratch that. No, it's not supposed to be a pun. Never mind. KS trike. That. I'm technically a lupin. A lycanthrope, some might say. I had researched the subject after my first change, and gorged myself on as many werewolf tales as I could get my hands on. In my favorite, The Goddess, Hera was supposed to have made twin girls into wolves to protect a Thracian poet as he wandered the earth spouting prophecy and oracles to the masses, until they fell prey to the wiles of Romulus and Remus. Something like that. Anyway, hey, I'm not a big reader of the classics. Well, there isn't any Thracian poet in my life, and the only oracle I consult is my daily horoscope when I want an uneasy laugh, and I'm sure not wandering the earth as much as I'd like to right now. No, the closest thing to any Thracian poet I know is my editor, and he's not too happy with me lately as my galleys keep coming back redlined with chunks of text missing. See, I'm a travel writer. Ashley Marie Scott by name and pin. 20 never mind. Years old, and terminally single according to my dead mother. Unlike that is my vacuous sister Amber Michelle, who got married young and had a son before deciding she wanted to bat for the other team. I might have that out of order. But you get the idea. They divorced and then she fell in love with a lesbian. Chief of police turned high-powered city attorney. Makes her, well, whatever. In love, I guess. I wouldn't know. Never really been. Not for sure. I, on the other hand, specialize in luxury health spas of the high seas and high mountains, the cities and the coasts. My latest find had me a third world country, also known as Idaho, with a wicked staph infection and an HMO surgical team determined to turn a pound of flesh into an ounce of cure. But, as I mentioned before, I am now grounded, stuck in my hometown of Knightsbridge, California, staying with my sister, her partner and my 5-year-old nephew in a house that could be photographed at any time of the night or day for good housekeeping. Not my idea of comfortable living. A place for everything and everything in its place. I'm more the bra on the doorknob kind of girl at my loft back in the city. Did I tell you that I hate my sister even while loving her? No, really I do. She's perfect. Even my parents think so. Except for the fact that she's bisexual in a lesbian phase, but they're slowly coming around to that too. Oh, did I tell you I'm also a werewolf? Right. I did. Must be the medication. Snort. Wonder how that one's gonna go over with the in-laws? Oh right. Don't have any. Never mind. So, let's just say at certain times of the month, Mother Nature's even more of a bitch with me than with most women. I'm sure you're wondering about that bullet wound, so I'll tell you a long story short before the short story gets long. I was doing a piece on Pacific Northwest spas. Hardship, yeah, but the job paid diddly squat, so I might as well enjoy the expense account. Besides, cold, bad, heat good, and every now and then I meet a cute guy. I mean, I can rock a bikini with the best of them, and nobody expects me to have perfect makeup in a spa. But I digress. For the story I got the full package, comped for the magazine of course. Steak and lobster, eggs Benedict, and one of everything on the spa menu. It was glorious. I took pictures and my editor got his 5,000 words, for which he paid me almost nothing, but that was the deal. Live high on the magazines. Dine cheap on my own. The resorts all knew who I was of course, and were happy to oblige. How else would I get the freebies? And I wasn't writing exposés after all. My job was to sell magazines, whether print or online editions, which sold advertisements to paying customers. Long story short, yeah. So I worked my way through lockers, changing rooms and the amenities therein, to the pools. I did a full set of lap work to check the workout box for the day, and then the fun started. Sauna, cold dunk, heat lamp, cold dunk, steam bath with herbal infusion, and so on. Wonderful. After that came a mud bath, hot rock massage, lunch at the wine bar, mani-pedi, facial, you get the picture. Most fun a girl can have alone. I spend a lot of time alone, I guess. On the afternoon in question, I hurried upstairs to my room and banged out a rough draft, quick and dirty, because tonight was moonfall, that is, a full moon, which for me makes the usual girl's monthly seem hella tame. Anyway, I packed my day pack. Okay, night pack with the stuff I'd need change of. Clothes, wipes, water and food, handheld GPS, what a godsend, and so on. My usual MO was to hike to a landmark before sunset, like a mountaintop or tip of a lake, load it into the GPS, clip the little unit to a collar and put it on. Then I'd have a nice dinner, a tiny fire if I could, get naked and wait for the change. After doing it for years, I was pretty lucid in wolf form, but I could easily get distracted, which was where the GPS came in, just in case I changed back somewhere other than the campsite. It would help me sneak in the buff across country to my stash. Either way, I'd clean up and get back to the other 27 days of my life before the next change. This time, though, someone had shot me with a tranquilizer dart in the middle of the night, no less. Who does that? No idea, never found out, don't want to. No. Narcotics don't work well on me in wolf form, by the way, which was why I didn't go down. Nothing less than a bare dose would probably do it. Managed to make it back without trouble. The next morning I did the steam room, and then the infection showed up. Made up a story about a hunter's ricochet and went to the ER expecting to be sent on my way with antibiotics, but they said it was a drug-resistant strain. So boom, straight into surgery. From the way it felt afterward, the surgeon used a steak knife and an ice cream scoop to excise the necrotizing tissue. They told me they got it all and shot me full of the latest thing, gave me pills to take and orders for a regimen of bleach baths for the next 3 weeks. I was able to get 3 more free days at the resort by hinting that the infection was their fault, caught from the steam room bench, but eventually I had to go recuperate where assistance was near. Among my relatives, Amber was my best choice. I really do love her, even if we are like oil and vinegar. We may taste great together, but we still don't mix very well. Want to guess who's the oil and who's the vinegar? Chapter 3. I watched Amber primping in the mirror, envious as sin. She'd bought this darling new turquoise collection from Sephora, and was wearing some Jimmy Choos that I would have killed to afford. Sigh. Don't ever let any of those sparkly werewolf books or movies fool you. Unless our injuries are cured by some kind of magic, we also have to heal over time. Oh, it may happen faster, especially in wolf form, but when it comes to infections, colds and viruses, we're just like the rest of you. And since I was trapped at home nursing an oozing sore, I was stuck with what the girls had on disc in the den or what JR had in his bedroom. Hell, I could always play SingStar, but a girl gets tired of hearing the sound of her own voice. Had my phone, but as I paid for the data myself, I had to go easy on it when I wasn't working and able to expense it. I couldn't even figure out how to work the streaming TV channels, and the only internet this retro household had was a cheap hotspot from 5 years ago. Think Elle deliberately made everything complicated so nobody could mess with her sports. So where you going tonight? I asked as Amber put herself together. Oh, nothing special, she answered. Elle has this charity function sponsored by the Animal Rights Coalition. Animal rights? I sneered. What about people's rights? I mean, some of us treat our dogs better than we treat each other. Don't we, Spanky? I threw that last bit out at the miniature schnauzer who sat in the doorway staring up at Amber's transformation. I turned back to watch my sister go from beautiful to breathtaking in the Clairol quality lighting over the mirror. She'd mesmerized me ever since I was child with her ability to use makeup in its most subtle and glamorous ways. That's because Spanky's special, Amber sing-songed. Aren't you, Spanky? He barked in response and his stubby tail began to wiggle. Amber sighed and touched up her lips with the darling cinnamon custard. Don't think you're missing anything. Just a lot of ho-hum and small talk. You'd find very boring. I know I will. Hey now, Elle said. I watched her look over from where she stood, putting on a few last touches of her own in the other mirror. His and hers. I mean hers and hers mirrors, it was so decadent. I'm standing right here, you. No. Amber launched another of her dazzling smiles and gave Elle a peck on the cheek as she exited the master bath. I followed, feeling frumpy in my Jacqueline Smith flannel cotton white PJs with the intersecting black, blue and brown stripes down the side. Besides, Janetta MacDonald will be there and she can't help but seethe whenever she sees me. Just another perk for looking like you, Ashley. Amber skewered Shane's sister, I thought. Crap. I was hoping she'd get out of this town so I wouldn't have to remember. The truth was, I didn't have to remember, at least not right now, so I flipped a switch in my head and chose to think of other things. Anyway, I'm sure you can keep yourself occupied for a couple of hours by yourself. JR's over at his dad's and Mervyn won't be bringing him back till the morning. Amber strode forward out of the bedroom, down the stairs to the landing, and almost fell down the steps. Damn it, JR. She shot into the air as she grabbed for the banister. Honey, she yelled. Did I or did I not tell JR to move his things from off the stairs? You did. Elle's voice came out of the bedroom. When it came to raising JR, Elle was pretty hands-off. I thought so. Amber shook the exasperation from her eyes and smiled. Kids. They may just be the death of me. She bundled up the nylon jacket that JR had left on the floor and tossed it into the laundry room around the corner. Elle? You ready? Hold your horses, woman. Elle snapped from the bedroom. I'm coming. I strangled a laugh. Ah, domestic bliss. Amber glared and carefully flounced down the hallway. Yeah, well, don't you worry, sister. Elle sucker punched me in the arm as she breezed by. Your time will come soon and then we'll see who's laughing. Not if I have anything to say about it. I yelled from my position at the top of the staircase, cradling my elbow. Amber yelled back. And don't even think about sneaking into my room tonight to try on my clothes. I've booby-trapped the closet. And with that, the door slammed and my sister and her partner were out for the evening. The dog barked while I tried to do my happy dance. I thought better of it as a twinge of pain reminded me of my wound. So I just sang. I do the hippie hippie shake, yeah? I do the hippie hippie shake. And I headed off to see what latest additions Amber had made to her wardrobe. Booby trap hell. I eat booby traps for breakfast. I am so depressed, I said 3 hours later from the Berber carpeted floor of my sister's humongous walk-in closet, scratching Spanky behind his ears and calculating the deficiency of my own wardrobe. I realized what having two healthy incomes can do for a woman's choices. Amber and Elle had racks and racks of top-of-the-line name brands, and even JR had designer stuff to work with. Maybe I should become a lesbian, I said to the uncomprehending Spanky. Or at least bisexual, and marry a successful lawyer. They seem to get all the attention and the swag. The little schnauzer cocked his head at me and bumped his nose up for more pronounced attention. He didn't usually like outsiders, but since we came from the same zygote and he likes my sister, I guess he likes me too. Huh, Spanky? Should I become a lesbian? I asked him in my girliest voice, but he only licked my nose and then looked away. Ashley, you would make a terrible lesbian, Amber said as she breezed by me through her walk-through closet into the master bath. I'd heard her come in, of course, but I was too depressed to move. You like guys too much. I do, Spanky. I baby-talked as I rubbed schnozzes with the dog's cute little muffin nose. I do like guys too much. It's horrible. I know, but I just can't stay away from rock-hard abs and tight butts. You are really disturbing me, Elle said as she hung up the expensive looking slick black with pearl piping power blazer she'd worn that evening and took off the sensible but amber-influenced brand name flats she always wore. Put the dog down and back away slowly. I know. I disturbed myself. I groaned and rolled onto my back on the floor. Ow, ow, ow. Amber stuck her head out of the bathroom and looked worried. Ash, are you okay? I'm fine. I'm just so pathetic, I cried as I cradled my wounded hip. Hey Amber. I think I'll let you handle this one. Elle smirked and headed downstairs for a late-night snack. Women of society never eat much at social functions, hence the voracious appetite afterward. Ashley Scott, you are not pathetic. But I am. I am. I moaned and curled up into a fetal position while Spanky played leapfrog over my aching ass. No, you are not. Mother would roll over in her grave if she heard you talking like that. You are a powerful, wonderful girl. Amber, shush, I muttered into the dog's fur. I did not want a visit from my dead mother just at the moment. Oh, didn't I tell you? My mother haunts me. Maybe she haunts other people, but as far as I know, only I can see her. I've spotted some other ghosts from time to time, but I always shy away and act like I don't. This ability has something to do with the Lupin gene, I believe. Amber didn't get it. Only one per zygote. So I'm the one with the weird menstrual cycle and the need to turn hairy at every full moon. Amber knows nothing, of course, about me or Mom, and I intend to keep it that way. Sigh. What do you know about being pathetic? I whined, picking up a pair of her Manolo Blahniks and bringing them to my nose to inhale. I was in heaven. They still smelled new. Because you and I are two peas from one pod and I am not pathetic. So, ergo, neither are you. Oh well then. That clears everything up. I had to laugh. Amber grinned right back at me. I love you, you know, I said, and right then I really meant it. I know. She did a quick kiss to the air as she went back into the bathroom to undress. I am lovable after all. I think my sister got all the cute genes in the family. I know I didn't come off half as adorable as she did, even when I was trying, which wasn't often. Where Amber was like pink Chandon, I was more like any hard drink you had to muddle sugar into to offset the bitters. An acquired taste. I crawled on my hands and knees back to my bedroom as the dog followed behind me, playfully nipping at my heels. Time to take a pain pill and sleep off the looming depression. Maybe tomorrow would be a better day, I thought. I hope. I prayed. I was asleep before my head hit the pillow. Chapter 4. Hey Amber. I called as my sister finally made an appearance at 9 in the morning. I just got the weirdest email, I continued as she stepped blearily to the door of the den. Look at this. I swiveled the screen at her and let her read. Who said you could use my laptop? She said. I gave her a shit-eating bear grin. Grr. Yeah, grr. She looked and read. To whom it may concern. It has come to my attention that you may not be aware, but that you have been targeted and I have been compelled to help terminate you. I tell you this Because I do not believe the accusations that my employer has leveled about you and feel that you should know so, as this does not happen very often, in fact never, as I am a professional, but I trust you and want to help you. Sincerely, a friend. The sender's address was nothing but a bunch of characters. It must be some kind of anonymous email server. What the fudge? Came the words from my sister's usually righteous mouth. That's kinda what I said, but with a C and a K. I stared at her. This can't be serious. Amber looked more like me when she wasn't all dolled. She the lipstick lesbian and I the tomboy, go figure, but sans makeup too. Peas and all that. That's what I said. And God, what a hack. JR could write better copy. You get a possibly threatening email and you're critiquing the sender's writing skills. I've gotten threatening emails before, I said with an offhandness I did not feel, but usually they have something to do with an article I wrote. We looked at each other with a slight tension in our eyes. Hey Elle, Amber yelled at the top of her lungs. Before we knew it, Elle was at the door with a baseball bat, looking thoroughly disheveled. What? What's the matter? What? Elle brandished the bat like she was trying out for the San Francisco Giants, shook the morning sleep from her eyes and blinked at us uncomprehendingly. Amber handed Elle some reading glasses, one of the many sets she had lying around the house. Look at this email. She swung the laptop around some more. Ashley just got this and I don't know what to make of it. Elle read quickly, mouthing the words. When she got to the word terminate, she looked up at me and her eyes got wide. Duck! She screamed, and we all did as I heard the sound of breaking glass over my shoulder and caught it on the chin as a baseball sailed into the room. The sound of quick footsteps padding up the walk and JR's voice were the next things I remember as Amber shook me where I lay. Is everyone okay? Why is Aunt Ash on the floor? JR asked. Ashley, wake up. My sister's voice now. Am I dead? I murmured. At least I thought it was me as I struggled back to consciousness with the dog licking my face. Spanky, knock it off. I pushed him away, but he came right back, thinking we were playing some new kind of game. Spanky, go lie down, my sister ordered, and when my sister used that tone, you knew you were in trouble. The dog slunk out the door and collapsed on the tile, laying his head on his forepaws and giving us that "what did I do?" look. Be careful, JR, there's glass all over. Gee, Mom. I'm sorry. I didn't think I could hit the thing that hard. I wasn't even trying. JR apologized profusely from the doorway of the den. My ex-brother-in-law Mervyn, and I emphasized the ex as in crossed out, no thanks, but bye, stood behind my nephew smirking as his face wandered into focus. Damn, Mervyn. Next time you want to take out the ex, why don't you make sure you're aiming on the right twin sister? Amber sponged me toward consciousness with a cool cloth. And you can stop that now. I'm up. I growled. Just had to get my knees under me as I rose from the carpet. Better put something on that, Mervyn joked. Or you're gonna have rug burn all over the side of your face. I snarled, you oughta know. Doesn't your new girlfriend like to drive? Let him figure it out. Amber, can you please get your smarmy sperm donor out of my sight? Mervyn, you're not helping, my sister carped as she pushed his sorry ass toward the door. And you're paying for half the repair. Well, excuse me, he called and headed out. Take it easy, champ. You played a good game today. Thanks, Dad. JR called and waved goodbye. He turned back to me with a cute little pout and said, I'm really sorry, Aunt Ash. I know you are, sport. I gritted my teeth, smiled and waved him off to clean up in his room. Then I turned to my sister. I really hate that guy. Don't you say that about my son, she said with a grin. I wasn't talking about, never mind. I hobbled back into the chef's grade kitchen. You know Mervyn has always been a fan of yours, Amber continued. I have no idea why, but he likes you. That's just 'cause I've got all the looks of the woman he married, but I don't hate him as much as you do, so he thinks he might get some from me sometime. And I don't like him like I used to before I wised up. That's bound to make him a little insane. Wow, you know, I'd forgotten you liked him back then. Maybe we should have swapped places when I was married instead of getting divorced. Then we would have both got what we wanted. He would have never known the difference. Yeah, right. I laughed ruefully, like substituting a sow's ear for a silk purse. Amber and I used to do a lot of self-swapping in high school, mostly just for grins, but every now and then, when one of us wanted to go out with a guy who asked, but the one he asked didn't. We'd trade without him knowing. After the first full moon of my 16th year, we didn't play that game anymore. Amber still felt guilty it hadn't been her on that fateful date, like it should have been. I was just thankful that if somebody had to die, it wasn't me. I'm sorry. Maybe being a wolf has made me callous and Shane was an omega. Anyway, tell you about it later, I promise. I'm serious, Ash. I think we need to report this email to the police. Elle is the police, I said as I grabbed ice cubes from the freezer and stuck them in a plastic bag. A few pieces ended up on the floor. My sister glanced over at me, wondering if I was going to take care of it. I'd get to it, but if it wasn't soon enough, I knew she'd be pissed off. She was already frowning at the floor where the ice was melting. Oh, for Pete's sake, Amber. I'll get it, I said and took a moment to wipe the puddle of water off the floor. Then I stuck the ice-filled bag to my head. Sometimes I hated being a twin. And she's right. I am the police. Elle kissed her on the cheek as she went past. You used to be the police. But then you took a job with the city, Amber reminded her, all syrupy-like. So, maybe I'm out of practice, but I'm still the city attorney. That's gotta count for something. She cocked her head and winked at me. I've got connections. And a gun. Yeah, that's gotta count for something, I echoed and stage-winked right back at her. Elle was very much a cards-to-the-chest kind of gal, but she could be real amusing when she let her sense of humor show. Amber, on the other hand, had a tendency toward taking things way too seriously. Still, Amber sniffed at us. She hates any ganging up unless she does the ganging. Still, Elle drew my sister out and did a quick waltz with her around the room. Still, she re-echoed. I think if it happens again, we need to report it. I'll report it right now if that makes you feel better, Elle said. Then she started getting handsy with Amber. Guys? Can you just take it somewhere else? I asked ever so humbly. They stopped and looked condescendingly at me. What? You homophobic or something? Elle pulled my sister into a twirl and then dipped her. No, I said. Then under my breath as I walked away. Just envious. It was true. Total sister envy. 'Cause she had the life. She had the house. She had the child whom I adored, and the dog that I liked as well. And she had the tall, dark, and handsome SO, only not so tall and handsome as I. Imagine the kind I wished I could come home to each night. Let's face it, she had it all. And what did I have? A lot of frequent flyer miles, fab trips, upgraded hotel rooms, and free spa treatments. Okay, maybe I didn't have it so bad. Chapter 5. It was day 3 and I was totally bored. No, really. Abso-bloomin' out of my freaking gourd. And I said so as I perched on one butt cheek on top of the dryer watching my twin fold laundry. Move your legs. You're in the way, Amber said. I scooted over to give her access, wincing. You know, when JR tells me he's bored, I usually send him out to play. Amber said, matching pink socks and folding polka dot underwear. Are you crazy? Don't you know? Suburban neighborhoods are incredibly dangerous. I made a face at her, only semi-mock horrified. Ashley, this is Knightsbridge, not Oakland. And JR's a smart kid. Besides, he knows not to go far, and we have a neighborhood watch program. Yeah, after that email, it's the neighbors I'm going to be watching. I ran my hand along the dust-free blinds and peeked out the window of the laundry room, squinting into the morning light. See, I thought, even the dust knows not to mess with Amber. Go walk around the neighborhood. Play anti-security. The fresh air will do you good. She looked at me chagrined. Oh my God. I sounded just like Mom. Yes, you did. Did someone call me? I blanched when I heard my mother's voice coming from the heavens. Not exactly, I muttered. What? Amber asked, uncertain. I think I'll go take that walk. I hopped to the floor, much to my butt cheeks' dismay. Then I hobbled downstairs and out the front door. Leave the door unlocked. I don't have a key, I called out behind me and then wondered if I should have yelled so loud. I mean, Amber and Elle lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, but in places like this there were always older kids and crimes of opportunity. On second thought, I'll take the spare, I yelled and grabbed it out of its hidey hole, sticking it in my shoulder bag. Good idea, my sister called back, as I locked the door behind me and turned to greet the day. Ugh, I thought. It's much too bright out here. What the hell is that hot thing doing up in the sky at 9 a.m.? I grabbed the Donna Karan sunglasses I'd nicked from Amber out of my bag and Took a big inhale of the grassy sweet smell of cow manure. I could still feel the residue of my dead mother's presence, and I hurried away, keen to escape from the force of nature that is her spirit. Ghosts naturally retain more power when they are near a symbiotic frequency of shared experiences. An exorcist once told me. Are you wondering why I was talking to an exorcist? When people get together, shared desires often manifest visitations from the other side. Put enough people's concentration on one thing and a thought can achieve critical mass. Hence the number of Elvis sightings, no doubt. Amber and Elle lived in a burb district on the edge of Knightsbridge proper. Directly behind their house, placed at the east end of the development, rose steep hills and a deep cut that led up into Knightsbridge Canyon. To the north and south sides of their subdivision were open acres where the valley began, a gentle rolling into a land of almond orchards, horse stables and dairy farms. When we were younger, we actually got milk from one of those dairies, but not anymore. It was cheaper to buy from the grocery store and safer, so they said. I liked it better back then. Wah. With determination in hand and a fresh pack of slim clove cigars. I didn't want Amber to know that I still smoke sometimes, but hey, it was better than tobacco. I headed down the road toward an in-town walking trail. With a pain in my ass, I wasn't ready for any serious hiking. The path near my sister's home was paved, and it bordered the rows upon rows of similarly styled homes with precisely varied color schemes that housed the upwardly mobile middle class of Knightsbridge's finest. I wondered just how similar and precisely varied the lives of those who lived in them were as I stretched my legs. I stripped off the extra sweater I'd woken up with this morning, leaving myself braless in a tank top and sweats, and I seriously hoped that I didn't run into anyone I knew, since I hadn't shaved my pits in a few days. In contrast to my home in San Francisco, where fog was typical, I aimed to soak up the dry San Joaquin sun as I made the rounds. There weren't many people out, as it was a bit winter nippy, but not so bad that you could see your breath. Maybe 50. I continued around the corner away from the house. Before I knew it, I'd reached a large park with 4 baseball diamonds and decided that this was about as good a time as any to light up. I know non-smokers look at those of us who have a puff in the morning like we're crazy, but to a smoker the act has the same effect as meditation. Besides, it was nice to not be so distracted by all the other scents that the wolf inside me had access to in its catalog. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're sniffing your way through the neighborhood on 2 feet. Newsflash. Most smells are disgusting, even the nice ones, if your nose is sensitive enough. Ahem. I heard a voice behind me and turned. There, staring at me with the most beautiful blue eyes, was the one guy I was most worried about having to face again. My ex-boyfriend and former star of the Spartans football team, Will Stenfield. 6'2" and stocky, without an ounce of fat on him. He still had the prettiest eyelashes you ever did see. I won't even talk about the apps. Anyone who doesn't believe God has a sense of humor just ain't paying attention. Got another clove, or aren't you willing to share? He asked as I stared at him, speechless. I realized he was just as breathtaking as I remembered. I'd tried to forget. Hell if I would let him know, though. You know, that buzz cut really works for you, I deadpan, bracing my smoking arm with the other one under the elbow. Hey, he caught me off guard. And it was the first thing that popped into my head. Really? You think? 'Cause your sister just calls me cue ball. He grinned and my knees went weak. At least she's consistent. She called you cue ball when we were growing up, too. And you haven't called at all, Ash. Now why is that? Will picked the clove right out of my hands, took a drag, and then handed it back. I stared at the moist filter, thinking of the other places I remembered those lips being. A shudder moved through me for a moment, and then I came back. Poor cell plan. I cracked. No, the truth is, Will was my first crush and long time on again off again boyfriend from way back. During an off phase, I made the mistake of going out on a pity date with one of my sister's cast-offs, Shane McDonald. Will and I got to be even more off when the guy ended up dead. Dad sent me away for my junior year to a private boarding school because of the small-town hoopla and what it did to me. Most thought I was shattered over Shane's death the night of our date. Some suspected I was pregnant. Trust me, I was not. In fact, after the full moon fiasco that set off my first transformation, I was still too messed up to be interested in anyone. When I came back for my senior year, Will and I danced around but never really got back to where we had been. I knew even then that I wouldn't be staying in Knightsbridge, and he was a small-town boy all the way. always intending to take over the family landscaping business. I remembered a lot of tension when I left. I guess Will got over it because he was talking to me now. I waited, you know. He said it with a serious look on his face. I believed him, but back then I was running away and well, he was just part of what I'd left behind. It was never about you, I told him. It's amazing how much can be said with so few words when you have that connection like Will and I did. Do. Maybe. I know. He smiled. Can I at least get a hug? I read all your magazine stories about those fancy places. Straight to a writer's heart that went, so I obliged. Hell, I did more than oblige. When he opened up his arms, I buried my face in his ratty old sweat stained lawn jockey t-shirt, smelling of musk and dead leaves, old wounds and memories. So, what are you doing back in town? Will asked a few moments later as he gently escaped from my clinging embrace and returned to the lawnmower he'd been pushing down the walk. Oh, you know, just slumming. I grinned. Despite it being 5 or 6 years. I'd come back for the summer after high school and seen him a few times. Then, but not seriously. Now it was like no time had passed at all. He was still a redneck, and maybe somewhere inside me I was still a redneck's girl. California version, of course. We don't drawl. We do drink beer and drive pickup trucks. I'd heard Will had taken over the family landscaping business when his father, semi-retired with a back injury, and more often than not came home smelling of tree sap, grass and loam. It was woodsy, a little nutty, and always made my head spin. You doing parks and recreation now? I asked as I watched him load the mower into the trailer he had hitched to his Chevy pickup. That and everything else under the sun. You know, Ash, if you're not too busy, why don't you slum with me for a while? He cocked his head. Let's go. Hang out. Talk about old times. I don't know, I told him. The pain pill was wearing off and I had no idea how I was going to hobble over to the truck, let alone get up into it. I kinda had a little surgery. Will put out his hand reflexively. Oh crap. Was it something serious? No. I waved the matter aside. I got shot in the butt up in Idaho. Just hurts to sit down for long periods of time. Shot. I fed him the same simple half-truth I'd been using with everyone else. Just a ricochet off a rock. I was hiking, some asshole was hunting and thought my blue North Face looked exactly like a 12-point buck. I don't know. Whoever it was didn't own up, and I limped back to town, went to a spa the next day. And it got infected. He stared at me like I was a bad little girl, which wasn't all bad. I know, I should have gone into the ER right away and gotten antibiotics. But Will laughed. But he mock bowed. Hey, staying at Amber's is penance enough, and sitting down is a real bitch. Then you can stand on the seat with your head out the roof and hold on to the roll bar. Your chariot awaits, my lady. Will held out his hand. He was so cute I had to give it a go. Chapter 6. You are not going to believe this. Amber stood on the front lawn of the house, cell phone in one hand, talking while she watered the lawn with the other as we drove up. It looks like Ash and Will are together again. I could hear the sounds of exclamation coming from the other end as Will lifted me down from the tailgate. Hi, Will. Amber called and waved. I'll talk to you later, she told the phone and hung up on Elle. Fancy seeing you here. Yes, well, I found this poor handicapped bag lady wandering the streets, smoking a clove, and had to stop and lend her a hand, Will said to Amber as he walked me over. Don't let him lie to you like that, I said quickly, trying to divert her from the smoking tip-off. It was me who took pity on the poor schmuck because he had to stop and ask for directions. Now I know you're lying. Men never ask for directions. Besides, he's lived here all his life. So sue me. The diversion did not work. Ashley, I thought you'd given up that nasty habit, Amber said, so I whacked Will in the back of the head with the palm of my hand. Thanks for spilling the beans, loser. I turned back to my sister. Will's staying for lunch, I said, hoping to avoid a lecture and almost positive she wouldn't pull rank and nix his invitation. Oh no, he's not, Amber said. Oh no, I'm not, Will echoed. Come on. I bet you two haven't talked in a while. It'll be good for all of us, I said. Besides, I'm cooking. My sister rolled her eyes. Now this I've got to see. See, I told you I make a mean pot of spaghetti, I teased as I cleared the dishes and set another helping of pasta before the man I realized I wanted to Get to know better again. Please, Ash. I really couldn't eat another bite, Will said. Oh, come on. Just one more wafer-thin mint. Will grinned, deliberately stuck his fork into the center of the bowl and started slurping anyway, much to my delight. Actually, Ash, that wasn't bad for spaghetti. It was pretty good, in fact. Amber added as an aside to her SO, who had come home for lunch. Benefits of the small-town short commute. Wasn't it, Elle? It was very good, Ash. Elle played her role as the grown-up to the hilt. If it wasn't for Amber, I'd probably be having another helping myself. Elle laughed as Amber tickled her, pinching the pudge that she never could seem to lose. So why don't we go take that drive? I suggested to Will, who perked up at the sound and put down his fork. I'd taken another pain pill by now, so I figured I could at least make it through a 2-hour reunion tour of the hometown, and besides, I didn't think I could stand the lovey-dovey around here anymore. Catch up on the dish. Tell me who's divorced who and who's still having babies when they should have stopped years ago. And stuff. And stuff, Will echoed solemnly. You still have to clean up this mess. Amber tossed over her shoulder. I'll handle the dishes. Elle put a hand on Amber's wrist and squeezed. I think Ash could use the time out of the house for a while. Amber got it, smiled and then gave me a quick wink. Fine. Take your time. Key's still in the same place and don't forget to reset the alarm after you come in. Thanks, guys. I gave them a quick hug and limped enthusiastically out the door toward the pickup past Mervyn and JR, who were just coming home from soccer practice. Hi, guys. Bye, guys. I sang. Hey, isn't that Will Stenfield? I heard Mervyn ask Amber as he handed her JR's muddy cleats, which he took with 2 fingers and walked them into the garage. I think he dated Denise once, Mervyn commented, referring to Amber's replacement and JR's new stepmonster, then shrugged and walked away. Amber, Elle said in a warning tone as she poked her head into the garage. Amber turned and put her hands on her hips. What? Love you, Elle said. Hearing that, I was seriously tempted to toss my cookies, but with Will there, I was already too far away, reminiscing. So where do you want to go? Will asked as he revved the engine while I went through his CDs. I pulled out a scratched-up copy of the Cars' first album, one that he'd inherited from his dad. I still remember it playing from the work truck as Stenfield Landscaping groomed the school grounds when I was a kid. We both ended up loving the 80s music of our parents, I guess. Or maybe it was because Will was frozen in the past and I had no time to figure out what's a Bieber. Can we go by my old house? I asked. I want to see how much it's changed. Sure. He hesitated, looking at me funny. What? Nothing. Will laughed as he pulled out onto Walnut Avenue and over to the west side of town. Tell me. Tell you what? Tell me. No. Weirdo. Freak. Fine. I folded my arms and faked a sulk. When Amber and I were growing up, we lived on the good side of the bad side of town, a couple houses down from one of the retired mayors. His raised brick ranch style sprawled out over a half-acre lot and held lemon trees we used to swipe fruit from during the summer. These weren't the cute little things you get in grocery stores, the ones that look like they were made from plastic. Lemon molds. These lemons were frickin' monsters, grapefruit-sized. I had no idea why. Anyway, we had this weird thing about sucking the juice from lemons after coating them with salt, kind of like our older brother Adam did with cold sliced potatoes and equally cold slabs of butter. Had to be there, I guess. Will drove us down Golden Boulevard, which used to be part of the old highway, before they put the bypass through, and pulled into the parking lot of the Boxcar, an abandoned set of railroad cars that had been turned into a nice restaurant. I had worked there the summer I came home. For some, Knightsbridge was a college town, for others it was a great place to raise kids, but for single people it seriously sucked. Just one more reason why I had taken the travel writer's apprenticeship, seldom went back, and didn't look people up. I know, thin, right? Bad memories, I guess I'll admit to. Remember this place? He asked as we stared at the outside. God, yes. I'd spent that whole summer as the hostess greeter since I was too young to carry alcohol and too new to serve food and get tips. I did help. Bus tables. Minimum wage, go me. I met Palmer Cortland here and he tried to put a hand up my dress. You know, the guy from one of those daytime soaps where no one ever ages. I think he was 70. Looked 40 if he didn't move his face. Come on, can you blame him? Will waggled his eyebrows mock lasciviously. Or, actually lasciviously. Made me feel all tingly. Guess not, but I'm worldly and wise now. Back then, I laughed. And what about that Sid guy who used to be the chef? Oh my God. That's right. He had such a filthy mouth. I remembered. If the customers only knew the way he talked about them, they would have just died. I think he knew it offended you, and if I remember correctly, you told me it. Got even filthier, that is, until I had a chat with him. That was you? I never knew. That was sweet. I lay flat on the bench seat, put my head in his lap and stuck my feet out the window, taking the pressure off my ass. Remember when we all dressed up in white and played croquet in the park? I wasn't there for that one, but I remember driving by. You looked adorable. In white. He was right. I did. I do. I smiled. You're still pretty adorable. That made me sit up and look at him, searching his face. Will leaned over and put a peck on my forehead. I lifted my face and he kissed me for real this time. Very softly. My mouth parted involuntarily and his tongue flicked in and touched the tip of my own in an intimate caress. Was I really doing this? Is it hot in here or is it me? I asked as I moved away from him, opened the door and climbed out of the cab. Just down the road from the boxcar was a place called the Nordic Chalet where they still sold winter sports equipment. I marveled how it seemed some things changed and some things never did. Come on, let's walk, I said, just to clear my head, and proceeded to stroll down my hometown version of Main Street, USA, while trailing a bit behind. I can't believe the frosty freeze is still here. I kept up a running commentary as we walked. And there's the studio where Amber and I took jazz class. Knightsbridge School of Ballet was just around the corner, up there in that window, see? I pointed and Will sneaked up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. I folded myself into him and looked up into his smiling baby blues. What are you doing? I asked, my heart pounding in my ears. Reminiscing, he said as he leaned down and kissed me again, long and slow, and soft like a lover. My body melted into his. I whimpered as my heart threatened to crack, and I knew that I had it bad. Where the hell did this all come from? Old flames rekindled from banked fires. That was nice. You're welcome. Will laughed and kissed me again on the forehead. Lots of kissing going on here. I liked it. This was the last thing that I was expecting. But there's something about the people in your hometown, something very familiar, the same familiarity that breeds contempt, but when the right strings are played, it makes you feel like they know you inside and out, even when you know they really don't. But you can never go home again, though I thought I could right then. I slipped out of his arms and walked a few steps ahead of him again. I know what you're doing. What am I doing? He asked, daring me to answer. Don't think you can come in here all hella wonderful and worm your way back into my life that easy. Hella wonderful? Laughter from him. I got out of this hick town years ago, and I'm not going to be dragged back here in the lined bed of a Chevy with intertwined hearts on it, I said, referring to the etching on his back window. I never thought you would, he told me, eyes glittering in the sunlight, dappled through the maples. I hated it when men did that with their eyes. Hated it. Okay, I'm lying. Well, good. So back off, 'cause this girl's not ready to settle. I crossed my arms and looked at him defiantly. Since when have you settled for anything, Ash? He asked and grabbed my elusive hand. And if I was that kind of guy, I'd be insulted. Come on. I want to show you something. I let him drag me a few paces, then decided that with his bulk it would be a losing battle anyway, and matched his steps. Before we knew it, we were in front of Crave. Keith and Don Snyder had opened Crave Donuts when I was a kid, when one of those horrible chain donut shops was the only game in town. Pretty soon the other place closed. How's that for entrepreneurial? They made the best Bavarian creme I have ever tasted in my life, so when he pulled me in the door, I thought I was going to die. Hey Ash, came a voice from behind the counter. I didn't know you were in town. Jill Snyder, now Jill Blumenthal, came around the corner and gave me a big hug. I was taken aback for a moment. We'd never been that close in high school, but it just goes to show you that people's memories of the past are often more rosy than we expect. Yeah, I'm holed up at Amber's for a few weeks recovering from a surgery. Bullet wound on assignment. I see you're still in the donut biz. Bullet wound, she said, her mouth a big O. Just a ricochet. Nothing serious. Forget I said anything. You look great, bye. The way. And she did. Married life looked really good on her. Jill's face lit up. Oh, you're so sweet. That was the difference between her and a city girl, who would have taken my comment as one-upmanship. She was married to a tall, blonde and dishy silent type I knew from school but not very well, and now they had a few kids. Fought back a pang of annoyance. I was so not going to settle down or otherwise. You know, God laughs at people's plans, my brother always said, and if you swear you'll never do something, guess what? That's what will happen. Hey Jill. Will gave her a smile. Can we get some of your custard-filled chocolate bars? Jill smiled back and went behind the counter. I just made up a fresh batch, she said, and I had a sudden déjà vu as I remembered that her mother Dawn used to tell me the same thing. I watched with anticipation as she took the oozingly creamy custard and filled the warm, doughy chocolate-covered orgasm before my very eyes. Will paid her for the donuts and a couple of milks, and we sat over at a table by the window. When I bit into it, I thought I was going to die and go to heaven right there. One thing I never had to worry about was getting fat, by the way. Yes, all you girls can envy the hell out of me, but it has something to do with my monthly romp in the woods. Silver linings? Frankly, I don't think it was a good trade. You try waking up with your face covered in blood. You'll see. So, are they as good as you remembered? Will leaned his forehead into mine across the table in an intimate gesture, and I sighed. Better, I said, savoring every bite in silence as I watched him demolish his own donut in 2 seconds flat. I took a napkin and wiped his chin. Jill was looking at us with interest from behind the counter, and I knew that the social media gossip line was going to be hard at work this evening. Local girl returns reignites old passions. Let's get out of here, I said under my breath as we downed our milks and headed for the door. Bye guys, Jill called after us. Don't forget homecomings next month. Alumni games are first and then Trojans versus Spartans. Her voice drifted out. Everybody would love to see you. Trojans versus Spartans? I asked. Since when are Knightsbridge and Christian even in the same league? Boy, you have been gone a while, haven't you? Will teased. This even has a football team now. It's grown a lot. You're kidding, I said as we headed past the Shell station and back to the truck. Where are they getting the money? We had to buy our own cheerleading outfits when I was in school. Yeah, well, times change, Ash. He held the door of the truck open for me. And so do people. The town's not so small, and it got a lot richer with the influx of wealthy conservatives fleeing the Bay Area. Christian went from being that other school to the place the elite all send their kids at the same time the public schools were cutting their budgets. Wow. Weird. Yeah, never mind. Back on topic, believe it or not, lots of people remember you with fondness, he said, and I could see he meant it. I felt bad. I had been a pretty mixed-up kid, and after Mom died and the getting killed thing, which nobody ever talked about, don't worry, I'll tell you about it soon, I had a tendency to see the glass half empty rather than half full. It made me feel small, and I thought that perhaps I needed some new glasses. Half-sized ones, maybe that would be full with half the... Sorry, my metaphor just broke down. Not so good for a writer, but I always swore not to revise my diary, so I'll just keep on telling the tale. I sighed as he drove me down past the boutique where I'd worked in the basement the summer in middle school, putting price tags on bras before I even had a need for one. He pointed out the old Woolworths I swiped fingernail polish from, and the Safeway turned into a Vaughn's on the corner where we shopped for groceries back in the day. The small-town mansions that fronted the west end of town didn't look so large anymore, and as we turned right onto Broadway, and then onto Floral, the street where I grew up, I was floored. Wow, this place has really gone to seed, I said. Maybe it was just childhood, but I could have sworn most families in this neighborhood never had more than 2 cars, and none of them ever on blocks in the middle of the lawn. Will laughed. It's not the good side of the bad side of town anymore. All the money went up to the outskirts. New houses nearer the freeway for all the Bay Area commuters. He looked apologetic. You know, I've had dreams of coming back here and buying the old house. Dad sold it when he remarried, and we had to move into the house on Devonshire. After that, it wasn't really home, you know? Now, I think if I wanted to buy this place, I'd have to move it somewhere else just to feel safe. We parked outside. It actually didn't look too bad from here. Clearly it was the best-kept house on the block, if the neatly trimmed lawn and new paint job were any indication. Let's go in, he said. I looked at him aghast. What? I shrugged. Just walk up to the front door, ring the bell and say, "Hey, you know I used to live here. Can I look around your house for a while?" Why not? He smiled as he got out of the cab. People are still people. They'll understand. No way. I refused to budge, but I watched as his cocky self walked right up to the painted concrete steps, and then he turned to me. Are you coming? He threw his arms wide like he was in a movie or something. I shook my head, scrunched up my face, then jumped out of the truck. I had to see this. He rang the bell. Nothing. I was so relieved. See, they're not even home, I said. No kidding. Come on, let's sneak a peek inside. If I really wanted to, I could come back the next full moon in wolf form and check the place out, and no one would be any wiser. It would be safer. I wasn't a scaredy cat when I was in wolf form. In fact, when I was shifted, I wasn't afraid of anything. But now I was just petrified. Will reached out his hand and tried the handle. It turned and he pushed the door open. I was in shock. Come on, he said. Aren't you curious? He took a step inside the door. What? Will. Stop. I yelped and grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back and away from breaking and entering. Well, entering anyway. Hello? He called as I tried to shush him. Anyone home? And then Mom. Mom. And then it all came crashing into my head and I shoved him. You slimy shitbird. I yelled as he turned and I beat on his chest. He grabbed me and pulled me down to the tan-carpeted floor. I was so surprised I didn't even notice my butt pain. You own this place? I own this place. He grinned and I wanted to wipe that bird-eating kitty grin off his face once and for all. All the feelings that I ever had about this home washed through me and I began to beat on him, slapping him for making me feel stupid and scared, and then I began to cry. Well, that wasn't the reaction that I was expecting. Will kissed my forehead, held me and stroked my hair. I heard a sound and turned to see a woman's shoes and stockings out of the corner of my eye. Hi, Mom, Will said. I looked up bleary-eyed as his mother bent down to greet me. Hello, dear. And who have we here? I buried my face in Will's chest. Well, Ashley Scott, as I live and breathe. Hi, Mrs. Stenfield, I muttered as I turned my tear-stained face to her. Will's mother gently touched my chin. Now what's a nice girl like you doing with a rough boy like mine? She said with a chuckle. Get up off that floor, young man, and let me greet this girl properly. She stepped back and allowed us to rise. I smoothed the velvet crush of the fancy sweats I'd borrowed from my sister and ran my hands through my hair, pulling my locks away from my face. Come here and give us a hug. She pulled me into her and wrapped her small, thin frame around me, and I sighed contentedly. Mrs. Stenfield always knew how to make you feel at home. Why don't you sit down? I'll make us some tea and we can catch up, she said, and then disappeared through the dining room and into the kitchen. How could you buy this place and not tell me? I turned on him. If your mother wasn't here, I'd kick your ass to hell and back. Well, then I'm glad she's here. And when was I going to tell you anyway? You took off so fast after that one summer and we weren't dating anymore, and the few times you did come back home I hardly saw you, so when was I going to tell you? You could have emailed me. The address is on every article. I'm not an email kind of guy. I knew that. He didn't even have a smartphone, just a beat-up old Nokia that could barely text, and he probably only carried that because his work required. I always felt Will was born too late, and would have been more comfortable in Mom and Dad's world. You could have told Amber. She would have told me. I asked her not to, he said. I wanted to surprise you if ever. If ever what? Nothing. You know. Will's mother came back with a serving tray and a tea cozy as I slid into the soft lining of the brown suede sofa. I took the cup she offered, almost overwhelmed with the memories. So what brings you back to town, Ashley? Last I heard you were doing some articles for Contemporary Cruising. I forced myself to focus on talking to her rather than reminiscing. Really? Where'd you hear that? I avoided the first question. I so did not want to talk to her about my bullet wound. Once I started that, I'd be sounding like everyone's grandparents talking about their medical conditions. Why is it that the older people get, the more readily they pull out their aches and pains? Probably because there are more of them. I guess I could relate, or at least my butt could. I think you told me, didn't you, Will? She turned and I looked at him out of the corner of my eye. Huh. He was blushing. Yeah. I guess so. Mrs. Stenfield turned back to me. Will has everything you've ever written. Asks Amber to call him when you've got a new article and buys it up before it hits the stand. Oh really? I looked at him with pursed lips. I wondered what other secrets my dear identical twin had been keeping. I made a mental note to interrogate her when I got home. Oh yes, Mrs. Stenfield went on with enthusiasm. I think my son just might be your biggest fan. I could not believe it. Will Stenfield? He'd never be comfortable in a 5-star hotel and spa. Then again, well then, I guess I'll just have to hit you up when I finally organize my fan club. I laughed. How natural this all seemed. Smooth. Easy. Not like any of the other conversations I've had with the parents of the guys I've dated. Actually, scratch that. I rarely got around to meeting the parents of the guys I dated, because I normally didn't go longer than 3 dates with any of them. Sound familiar? Will settled back and popped the leg rest up from where he sat at the end of the sofa sectional. He looked really comfortable and at home here. In my old home. Who would believe it? We chatted a bit more small talk and things. You know, you really should go visit Sam and Muriel next door. I bet they'd love seeing you again, Mrs. Stenfield continued. Darcy's over there a lot, with her husband and the kids. After Oliver died, they needed the grandkids around to fill the place with gladness. Darcy and Oliver were our neighbor playmates growing up. Ollie died of diabetes complications years before and I didn't get back very often. Sometimes felt guilty about that, but damn it, my life wasn't easy in coming. Home always intimidated me. I was a moody bitch growing up and still am. Sometimes, and didn't like being reminded of that fact, which is why I usually avoid things like homecoming and class reunions. Forgive yourself, the little voice in my head said. Promise to try. Yeah, maybe I will, I replied to her and myself both. Will threw the kickstand back on the recliner and pounced out of the chair. Hey Mom, I'm gonna show Ashley the rest of the house. Let her see what we've done with the place. Of course, dear. Oh my God, why did he have to be so cute with his mother, and me without mine? Since I was 11, at least corporeally. But he was, and he pulled me up off the couch and motioned me over. As you can see, I stripped the paint off the mantel and off all the floor and sideboards, leaving the natural walnut to breathe. This place was made simple, but they used really good techniques in the joins. He rambled on about renovation as I ran my hand over the polished grain. It looked like he'd put a lot of love into the job, and I said so. Will smiled shyly and my heart went pitter-pat. I was such a goner. Inwardly I groaned. What the hell was I doing? This wasn't going to work, me the world traveler and him the small-town guy. Will showed me how he'd done the same refinishing with the French doors that slid into the wall and talked about hand beveling, and then showed me the wall with the china cabinet where we used to keep only the best dishes for when guests were over. We usually ate in the kitchen otherwise. The etched panes of crystal seemed to glitter, and the light from the chandelier over the dining room table refracted rainbows along the wall as he opened and closed the cupboards, showing me the gleaming burnished solid brass hinges. God, I loved this place, though I really didn't understand as a child how nice it all was. We hardly ever do. They'd cleaned up the sun porch that opened off the dining room and added a settee and a breakfast nook, and I smiled as I remember how often I'd retreated to this room as a child to read about the Patchwork Girl in Oz and Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. Will then let me out the side door of the house and showed me the well-tended gardens where my father and I had pulled weeds and the now huge chrysanthemums we planted years ago. He walked me around the back and showed me how he'd turned the tomato garden where we used to have mud fights in the late summer into a small rock garden, and how he'd resurfaced the patio and rebuilt the sandstone outdoor barbecue that was still shaded by a couple of plum trees. Sliding open the garage, I caught the whiff of gasoline and the same smell of freshly mown grass that clung to his well-oiled tools occupying the back wall. And he showed me the motorcycle he was building from scratch. That looked like he hadn't worked on it for a while but would get back to once the landscaping season slowed down in winter. Hey, is that crawl space still up here? I asked and climbed up the slatted wall on the left side of the garage to peek my head into a small storage area. On a sleeping bag up there we'd felt each other up for the first time, hiding from the world and discovering clumsy teenage lust. Don't go up there, he said, but I already had. Looks like you haven't been up here in a while. I saw it clean and empty. Climbed down, snickering. Yeah, well, there's this thing called the internet now. he replied. Sheepish. What, no girlfriend to take care of your base carnal needs? I asked with false lightness. No, Ash. Not since you. Wow. I felt honored and more than a bit pressured. He really had waited. Gave him a peck on the cheek. What was that for? Because you're so cute when you turn red. I hugged him again and then stepped away. Let me see the rest of the house. I ran toward the garage door, pulled it shut behind me and latched it. Don't you dare lock me in here, he called, but I already had. He pounded on the door and I giggled. Ash, it's not funny. He pushed hard against it and I thought the lock was going to snap. Okay. Step back and wait a second. I unlatched it. When I slid the garage door open, I saw anger in his eyes. What? I remarked. Boy, he was actually pissed. You of all people should know that that's not cool. And all of a sudden it dawned on me how right he was. I'd gotten locked in the garage more than once back when I was a little kid, and the last time I did, it took a couple of hours for someone to find me. It happened to be Will. By that time I was so distraught, I thought the rapture had occurred and I'd got left behind. I shivered at the memory. See, there were these movies some friends of ours had been into when I was little about getting left behind after the second coming, and then the Antichrist showed up and everything went to hell, Christopher Walken style. Freaked me out so bad I had nightmares for days and prayed the sinner's prayer every night for the next 2 years. So, when I got locked in the garage after falling asleep there one day, I was understandably distraught. My brother and Amber had just laughed at me. You're right, I said and hugged him. I should know better. I looked into his eyes and apologized. Forgive me. He nodded. Of course I forgive you. People don't apologize enough anymore. Instead they say something like, I'm sorry, or even worse, my bad. But forgiveness only seemed to happen in certain circles, and I'm sorry can mean so many different things, including sucks to be you. Coming home was hard. It reminded me of all the things I'd done that I was ashamed of. So why was I back here? Will said, come on. Let's see the rest of the house. He pulled me close and sniffed my hair as we walked toward the back door past the fruitless mulberry tree that our family had to trim as a ritual every Thanksgiving. I looked up into the newly sprouting branches. You know, when I was younger we had to cut this damn thing back every Turkey Day. I spent hours here on the ground waiting for the branches that fell. Amber would drag them over and I would cut them up into manageable pieces that we'd tie with string, and when the bundle got large enough we'd tie it all up and drag it out back to be hauled away on trash day. I always envied my brother Adam, who got to be up in the tree running the chainsaw. Will laughed. Well then, next Thanksgiving you can be chainsaw girl and I'll handle the groundwork. Aren't you ever afraid you're going to fall? Nah, we strap ourselves in with harnesses nowadays. Too much liability with insurance if we didn't. He opened the swinging door to the back porch where the washer and dryer still sat. I ran my hands over the cream-colored appliances and experienced a sense of déjà vu all over again. I think that's the same washer and dryer your mom used when you guys lived here, Will said. How do you know? They came with the house. I looked closer at them. I've replaced a lot of the parts over the years, but they're still the same housings. You're so handy. He laughed. That's me. Jack of all trades, master of none. 1 or 2, I bet. He blushed. I like that. Mrs. Stenfield puttered in the kitchen like my mom used to do, rinsing dishes and putting them in the dishwasher as we entered the house. The squared white linoleum floor and the sunny yellow kitchen were almost like I remembered. Only the trim was different and the countertops had been updated with colored tile, and the stove was a new glass-top electric instead of the gas that we'd had years before. Nothing fancy, but I didn't care. My old house. My old home, now Will's and his mother's. Wow. I remembered his dad and mom had gotten divorced, and that made it seem a little less idyllic. But still there was this glow. A tray with a pitcher of lemonade sat on the sunny kitchen table and Will poured us each a glass. Wow. I haven't had real lemonade in forever. It's just from frozen, Ash. Will laughed. Not like your mom used to make. Off those lemons you and Amber brought home. Oh, you remember that? Like it was yesterday. I'm glad you like it, Mrs. Stenfield said. Well, I'll just leave you two alone for a bit. I'm headed downtown to meet Joanne at the White Rabbit. Do you need anything while I'm out? No thanks, Mom. He rose and gave her a quick hug. I've got everything I Need right here. I thought I was going to die. Alone with Will Stenfield, and with his mother's blessing. In high school I was always considered the wild one of the terrible twins, and now I was being left all alone with a man unchaperoned. What was this world coming to? Of course, objectively I knew we were both in our 20s now, but parents always seem frozen in time, at least in their kids' minds. See you later, Ashley? Mrs. Stenfield said. Yeah, sure, I stammered. Stay out of the cookie jar, Will. She slapped his hand as he reached for the lid of the Winnie the Pooh honeypot on the counter. He cradled his hand in mock injury, but she had looked at me when she said it. Now I really thought I was going to die. What did she think I'd jump her baby boy's bones on the sofa while she ate dinner with a friend? Not a completely unattractive idea. She breezed out of the house without a word. Will held out the honeypot to me and I grinned. No thanks, I said. I'm watching my figure. So am I. His eyes roved me up and down. Felt good and I loved his laugh. On impulse I got up and opened the door to the basement and went down. Seemed they'd turned it into some kind of artsy rumpus room. Well, this is cozy, I said as he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. That was getting to be a habit. Yeah, it is, Will said, and I elbowed him gently in the gut. I was talking about the basement, nerdling. The tiny space contained a lazy boy, a reading lamp, a few shelves of model cars and airplanes, and a mysterious work in progress. I walked over to the easel and lifted the tarp from off the canvas that was sitting there. Your mom's? I asked as I viewed the Italian landscape on it. Actually, it's mine, he said, and he blushed. I turned back to the picture. It's good. Your perspective is off a bit here and here, but overall it has nice composition and your color palette is very Tuscany. I didn't ask for a review, but thanks anyway. Now it was my turn to blush. Sorry. Force of habit. Travel writer, critic. Goes with the territory. I bit my lip. In my job I was used to being free with my judgments and opinions of the world, and sometimes it was hard to turn it off. That's okay. I may not always like it, Ash, like what you have to say, but at least I know where you stand. That's rare. I blew a strand of hair out of my eyes. Most people aren't so appreciative and just think I'm a bitch. I'm not most people. I turned to look at him, really look at him. He'd grown up since I'd been away, and I said so. Nah. He stuck his tongue out at me. I'm still the same old guy. Lucky in life, unlucky in love. Well, at least you've got part of the equation. I touched a finger to the painting. It came away tacky, leaving a fingerprint. Oh no, Will. I thought it was dry. He laughed and dragged me over to the sink. Don't worry about it. He took a rag, dabbed a little thinner on it, and proceeded to wash my finger. Something inside me stirred and I felt lightheaded again. Must be the fumes, I whispered. But when he turned me in his arms, my knees wobbled as he pressed his body up against mine. I've missed you, Ash. His voice came out low and perfect, and he leaned his mouth over mine and caught my lips with his own. Warm, wet, probing. The tip of his tongue flicked against mine and my breath came out panting. There was a stirring in my belly as I felt him press against my hips. Too fast, I said and pushed him away. Sorry. My head swam and I forced myself up the stairs and out of his reach. Yeah, I know I wanted him, but thinking about something and then actually doing it are two different things. Once I was back in the kitchen I relaxed. You know, when we were kids we used to have Halloween parties down there. Used blankets to create walkways. And strung stringy stuff up for cobwebs and made things that jumped out to scare each other. I laughed as I ran water into the kitchen sink and splashed my face with it. Will handed me a towel. I know. I was one of your victims, remember? He shut the basement door behind him. I remember. We used to blindfold you guys, then make you put your hands into bowls of cold spaghetti and gelatin mixed with fake fur. It was disgusting. But hilarious. To you, maybe. He smiled. And this was my brother's room, I said as I pushed open the east side door off the kitchen. Apparently Will had turned this into a widescreen TV room. Adam used to lie on the floor below the turntable with his head between two speakers and blast Coldplay into his ears. You know I love you so, you know I love you so. Will sang and strummed an air guitar as we both sounded out the bass line. Doo-da-da-da-da-huda. Doo-da-da-da-da-huda. Dun. Dun-tun. Dun. Dun-tun. We just looked at each other and laughed. We are such geeks, I said. Now let me see my room. I turned and lurched out the other door through the sun porch across the dining room back into the kitchen and flung open the door off the west wall. You mean my room now? He said in my ear as he came up behind me. I don't know why I did it, but all resistance crumbled and I turned and kissed him. The next thing I knew we were on his bed and groping each other like two kids. Drowning. Will had his hand up my shirt and I grabbed his jean-clad buttocks as we kissed like starving children. When the phone began to ring, my addled mind suddenly hit clarity and I laughed. Aren't you going to get that? I asked as he nibbled on my ear. Ignore it, he mumbled as he nipped my lobe and sent spasms of pleasure through me. His right hand had found the underwire to my bra and his thumb slid over my breast and I gasped. You like that? Maybe too much. I was a good girl after all. Oh yeah, aren't we all in our own minds? The phone continued to ring. Then the machine picked up. You still have an answering machine? I laughed. He kissed me stupid and I. Shut up. You have reached. The rest of the message fuzzed in my brain as he pulled off my shirt and unsnapped my B-cup, his tongue taking the place of his fingers. God, Ashley. I love you. He whispered into my navel as he slid down my body. Shock woke me right up out of my lust-filled delirium. What? I grabbed his shoulders and pushed back. What did you say? My left eyebrow went up and I stared him down like a wombat in a cage, whatever that means. Ashley, I love you? He said it as if I hadn't heard it the first time. Well, that's just great. I snapped my bra back together and threw my shirt on over my head. Here we are getting along all fine and dandy and you have to go and drop the L-bomb. Ashley, I've loved you since high school. I've never stopped loving you. Thought you knew that. He looked so forlorn on his knees on his bed in my old room. So do you really wonder why I'm a mess? And how, pray tell, was I supposed to know that? I asked. I mean, animalistic teenage lust revisited, I get that. But love? Well, you don't even know me anymore. I know you. Well, maybe I don't. You know me. I didn't mean, never mind. I growled. Men are so exasperating. What? You all just think you can cat around until the day you decide it's time to grow up and settle down. Well, I don't want to. I didn't cat around and I've always wanted to settle down. Ashley, I'm the same guy. Yeah, maybe too damned much the same. Look at it from my perspective. You're a guy who lives with his mom and sleeps in my old room. I thought it would be romantic. Arg. I screamed and I marched out of the house with my buttons all askew. Ashley, where are you going? He called from the porch as I headed down the dilapidated block into the evening's slanting light. Anywhere but here. You know this isn't the best neighborhood to be walking around in, he yelled. Let me at least take you home. I'd rather have a gangbang with a bunch of cholos, I yelled back then. Looked around as a few faces peered out the windows at me. Haha, just kidding. I sing-songed, but I decided that now was as good a time as any to get back to the jogging I'd missed while my ass was healing. I ran. I knew it was a mistake, but after the first stabbing pain and the endorphins kicked in, I found myself reaching a good steady stride and forgetting about my injury. All I could think about was my breathing and keeping my bag from hitting me right on the wound as I slung it across my back. I cut through a couple of alleys and back onto the boulevard and then slowed when I hit the tracks and passed into what I felt would be a safer neighborhood. Night began to fall and soon I found myself walking alone with a designer handbag and a serious ache in my behind, in the dark next to Piccadilly Park. Don't ask me why they called it that. If you ask me if they wanted a classic London reference, they should have called it Hyde Park for its high crime rate. Hey, I like your bag, a voice called out behind me. Why don't you hand it over? Another voice beside me said. If you do, maybe we'll let you walk away and keep that pretty face of yours. My heart skipped a beat and I looked up and around, realizing that in my self-righteous anger, I walked right into a herd of biker chicks or something. At least they had a lot of leather and piercings and ink. You know, my twin sister's a lesbian, I said, trying to distract them as I slid away from the phalanx they were creating around me. Hey Arnett, I think she just called you a lesbian, one of the hard-faced girls spoke up. No, she didn't. She said your sister is a lesbian, said another. I already know that. Although what that has to do with giving me her bag, I got no clue, the more well-spoken leader said. So why don't you just hand me that purse and we can all go on our merry way? The circle began to close. Oh no, this was not going to happen. I looked at the sky and thought about trying to shift. If the moon was up at all, I might be able to induce the change, though most times I no more wanted it than the average girl craved a visit from Aunt Rosie Flo. And why don't you take your big old ass? I began but didn't get any further, as suddenly the sound of a Chevy V8 roared up behind me and Will threw open the door, scattering the crowd. Get in, Ash, Will yelled, and he grabbed for me as I leaped into the truck. Ow, ow, ow. I yelped as my butt slid across the seat and I could feel skin and Stitch's tear. Get me to a hospital. I'll do better than that. He said something vulgar. I'm taking you to my sister. His hands gripped the wheel and he put the pedal to the metal. Will's big sister Samantha Sam Stenfield was a nurse practitioner at Knightsbridge Hospital and worked the swing shift. Used to work graveyard, but when she got the chance she changed to evenings. Too many crazies on nights, she'd said. About 10 years older than Will and I, but she looked at least a decade beyond that. I guess that's what the ER will do to you, but she had a good bedside manner and didn't even blink when Will rushed me over. Oh, hi, Ashley. Nice to see you again, she said matter-of-factly. Strip and let's see what we've got. Get him out of here first, I told her. Will. She gave him that older sister to younger brother look and he retreated behind the curtain she pulled in front of his face. I dropped true and laid face down on the examination bed. I was so humiliated. So, you want to tell me what happened? Not really, I said. Oh, you mean with my bullet wound? I mean, it was a staph infection. Hunting. A ricochet. The bullet wound got infected. I amended. She scowled. Doctors these days. Better safe than sorry, they say. So let's just get a surgeon in for a consult, they say. And surgeons love to cut stuff. Anyway, when you got a hammer, everything looks like a goddamn nail. I winced and then bit my lip as Will's sister went on her rant. I was so not going to complain. It was my fault anyway. I was in this predicament. I figured. I may be from here, but it wasn't my Knightsbridge anymore. Well, you may have set yourself back a few days, but I've cleaned the wound and used a little skin seal instead of stitches. What do they got you doing for wound care? Oh, you know, bleach baths and fresh dressing. Well, keep it up. Looks like you've got a week or so to go, then you're out of the woods. But I'd continue the bleach baths until the wound is totally closed. Make sure that all the bacteria stays dead. Can I come in now? Will asked. No, I warned him. Hey, Will, give me your sweatshirt, Sam called, and he handed it to her. Through the gap. She turned it inside out as it still had a few grass stains. Here, step into this and wrap it around your waist. I'll put your sweatpants in a bag. There's bloodstains on them, she said. And Will, you take her straight home, you hear? Are you good on pain medication? I nodded. I'm good. Cool. She let me get quasi-presentable before she pulled the curtain open and let in her brother. Good seeing you again, Ash. Take care of yourself, she said as if I came in every Friday. Hadn't seen me in years. Nurses. Can't faze them. I let Will bundle me off to the truck and back to Amber's doorstep. I'll call you tomorrow. See how you're doing, he promised. Then he drove away. I kind of hoped he would and I kind of hoped he wouldn't. I sighed as I let myself in the door and slipped upstairs while the rest of the house slept. Was not going to tell this to my sister. No way, no how, I thought as I brushed my teeth and went straight to